and welcome to another edition of Casey's Corner 3. Driving home, got something to say. I brought up that in the last episode that the next team that I was going to discuss was the Milwaukee Bucks. And that's what I'm going to do, because they are 12-3, sitting atop the Eastern Conference with Miami and Boston right behind them. And Giannis is looking like he's going to repeat as MVP, averaging 30 points, 14 rebounds, 6.5 assists, 1.5 steals, 1.5 blocks, 32 player efficiency rating. Just ridiculous numbers. And those basketball fans and the people who would appreciate this, I've probably listened to a bunch of people saying that the numbers that he's putting up haven't been seen since Shaq, and he's just the modern version of Shaq because of how he plays. 7 feet tall, grabs the rebound, takes about 5 steps to get end to end, dunks on people, very strong, good defender. And there's so much to say about how great Giannis is right now. And before the season started, there were murmurings about the improvement that he could make, because he's still really young. He's still developing certain aspects of his game that the numbers that he put up last year, when he won the MVP, he could improve on and repeat. And it feels like we've gotten to this little narrative that we don't like giving repeat MVPs anymore. But LeBron's done it, Tim Duncan did it, Steve Nash did it, Jordan did it. Like, it's not unheralded. Steph Curry did it just 3-4 years ago. So it's not unheard of to just give guys back-to-back MVPs, especially when they're on the best team in the conference and they improved on the previous season. It's not like he took a step back but is still on the best team. He's improved his game. And honestly, I think he's on a worse team this year than he was last year. And they're still 12-3 after 15 games and the best team in the Eastern Conference. So I did this two episodes ago when I talked about the Lakers and the fact that, big picture thinking when you go and look into the playoffs, because Milwaukee is making the playoffs, and odds are that they're going to be a top 2 seed in the playoffs in the East. What I did with the Lakers is who's beating them. What I'm going to do with the Bucks is who's beating them. I don't think that the Bucks overall roster talent is as good as I think the Lakers is. And as I talked about with the Lakers, the top 2 guys, they're the best duo, with like Kawhi and Paul George just right behind them. And with the Bucks, it's Giannis, and then there's a pretty dramatic drop to Chris Middleton and Eric Bledsoe as their next best players. And while that might not win them a championship, they're not winning the championship this year. It's not happening unless they make a move. And I don't see a viable option for them to make a move for. Who are they going to trade for, and who are they going to have to give up, and all of that. They're stuck with the roster they have this year unless they do something dramatic. So they're not winning the title. They'll lose to whoever comes out of the West. But just thinking Eastern Conference, they might not be as top to bottom talented as the Sixers or the Celtics, but what we saw in the playoffs last year was a good team that played together well, and an all-time guy just saying, all right, y'all hop onto these broad-ass shoulders and I will carry us to a championship, which is what Kawhi did. One of the greatest playoff performances ever from Kawhi. And who's to say that that's not going to happen this year with Giannis? You have Chris Middleton, who can kind of be that second best Pascal Siakam type guy. You have a veteran point guard in Eric Bledsoe and George Hill, kind of like a Lowry and Van Vliet. You have, the 3-and-D thing from Chris Middleton is also the Danny Green, so you kind of have him playing those, like, in those same two roles. And you have, the Lopez's and Pat Connaughton and some of these other guys on the roster, but it revolves around the health and the ability of the Greek Freak. Last year, Toronto beat the Sixers, who are essentially the same team, and they're going to be like nitpicked. The Sixers might be nitpicked more than any other team this season, and that's really saying something with the fact that the Lakers have LeBron and AD, and the Clippers made those big moves to get Kawhi and Paul George. Who really knows what the Sixers are going to be? They're playing the Spurs tonight. They've been pretty good this season, but they haven't been the powerhouse that most people thought they were going to be. The Celtics have been playing better, and the Celtics are a really good team, but they're depending on who you think their best player is, I'll give you three choices. It's Gordon Hayward, Kemba Walker, or Jason Tatum. How far down the list are they compared to Giannis? I don't think it's really close how much better Giannis is than any of those three guys. And I think the second best player in the East is probably Embiid, and the third is probably Jimmy Butler. And really, like, if we broke it down, they're different positions. It's hard to compare who plays what position, like what. It's really hard to rank guys like that, but you can. I was just listening to Ryan Russillo talk to the college football playoff chairman, and they group teams into tiers. So it's like, who's the top three teams? They're going to be the top tier. And that's kind of what I feel like we need to do with the players. And right now, Giannis is on a tier by himself. And then you have a tier of the Embiids and the Butlers of the world. And that really says something about what's going to happen come April and May. How are these teams going to stop Milwaukee from doing whatever they want? How are they going to stop Giannis from putting up 30 and 14? They've built a really good roster around him. It's not necessarily as optimal a roster as you would like, but for what they had to work with, they've done a pretty good job. And it's going to be really interesting to see how their season ends up playing out. And I've done a lot of this talk about Giannis and his game and how good he is and how that's really the catalyst to the Bucks making the finals. And I haven't talked about as much about Chris Middleton and Eric Bledsoe and Brooke and Robin Lopez and George Hill. And there's a reason for that. Giannis is a top 5 player in the league. And when you have a top 5 player in the league, you need good players around him, but you can work around not having a secondary elite player. Again, we just watched it happen last year. Are you saying that Pascal Siakam was an elite player last year? Because I wouldn't say that. I think he was the most improved player for a reason, but he wasn't elite. He wasn't top 10, top 15 in the league. And if I really sat down and made a list, last year, just talking last year, he might not be top 20, top 25. This year, he's probably a top 20 player, possibly top 15. That's how good he's playing. And that's why these things are so fluid. Is year in, year out, we can have different teams, different roster structures, make the finals, make runs, make leaps. And Giannis is making another leap. And if he's hitting threes at any kind of average clip, who's beating this team in the East? And I know I made the same argument about the Lakers, and I mentioned it before. But really, who will beat Milwaukee in the playoffs when rotations shorten and Giannis is the best player on the court? 9 times out of 10, the team with the best player on the court wins the series. That's just what happens. That's basketball. That's why Jordan's the greatest of all time. That's why LeBron is up there too. That's why, the Warriors might not have had the best player on the court, but those are few and far between when they beat the LeBron teams. There are, that's why I said 9 out of 10. There are moments in time where the best player in the series doesn't actually win the series. But it is a pretty fluky thing in the NBA. So I would think that the Bucks are just going to keep rolling. I picked the Sixers before the season to make the finals. And the reason I did that was because overall their roster is just, it's on paper, it's an incredible team. How do you match up with their size? How do you match up with their athleticism? And one of the things I said before the season started is that we could see Brett Brown being the coach of the year, or we can see him being the first coach fired, just depending on how things worked out. And right now, the way things are going, they're not blowing the East wide open, which is what makes me record this about the Bucks and making the finals. I can't trust the Sixers. In the guy that I can put my trust in is from Greece, and he's known as the Greek Freak. And with that, I end this episode of Casey's Corner 3 on the Benchwarmers Podcast Network, which is really just 2 podcasts, but I appreciate everybody who listens. Go and listen to the lengthier Benchwarmers podcast with me, Andrew, and Alvin. Subscribe, follow, rate, review, all of that good stuff. And I will be recording another episode of this soon, and an episode of the Benchwarmers podcast will be up shortly. Thank you, and see you later.